Your Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Jem Sanford Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lancaster. Your Excellency, President David Granger, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and Mrs. Sandra Granger, Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Moses Nagamootoo and Mistress Nagamootoo, Honorable Chancellor of the Judiciary, Mr. Karl Ashok Singh, CCHOR, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Bartland Scotland, and spouse, Honorable Ministers of the Government, Honorable Attorney General of Guyana, Mr. Basil Williams, Honorable Chief Justice of Guyana, Madam Justice Yonette Cummins Edwards, CCH, other members of the Judiciary, members of the Magistracy, honorable members of the Diplomatic Corps, fellow members of the Bar, special invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It was Francis Bacon who once said, "Knowledge is power." And it is the great Kofi Annan who expanded on those words and added, "Knowledge is power, information is liberating, education is the premise of progress in every society and in every family." It is because we all seek after knowledge and have the burning desire to be empowered that we're gathered here this evening to witness and enjoy the opening ceremony of what would be a knowledge-consuming, knowledge-sharing, and empowering conference for the next 2 days. The Hague Convention Conference is very timely, and as Nadia Shriver once said, each conference occurs at the precise moment for which it was meant, usually when it will have the greatest impact on our lives. With those few words, I would now like to introduce to you our first speaker for this evening, who is none other than our Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Basil Williams, MP. Mr. Basil Williams has served as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs of Guyana since May 2015. The Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs received the first Government of Guyana Scholarship Award to pursue studies in law and completed the LLB Part 1 at the University of Guyana with a mark of merit. He proceeded to Barbados and completed the LLB Parts 2 and 3 at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, graduating with honors. At University of the West Indies, he was elected a member of the Guild of Undergraduates and served as student coordinator for the 13th Intercampus Games involving the 3 campuses of UWI Mona, St. Augustine, and Cave Hill. He was captain of the Cave Hill campus volleyball team. He continued his legal training at the Hewardin Law School in Trinidad and Tobago, graduating with the legal education certificate. His legal career commenced when he served as the legal assistant to Guyana's first executive president, Mr. Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, and following his death, the legal assistant to President Hugh Desmond Hoyt. The Attorney General spearheaded the legal battle against extrajudicial killings during the turbulent years on the east coast of Demerara, and he successfully represented numerous young people who were maliciously charged with murder during that period. He's also represented treason-accused Mark Benchcop and gave representation in both the Linden Commission of Inquiry and the Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry. The Attorney General and Minister was awarded certificates for participation in the USAID Attorney Mediation Program, Training of Trainers Workshop, and the Advanced Mediation Training, and is a faculty member of USAID's Faculty in Advanced Mediation Training. Mr. Williams, in private practice, was a leading attorney who enjoyed a wide practice in both the criminal and civil bar. He has been involved in many high-profile cases and secured numerous successes. He has also done many cases pro bono. As a sportsman, he was a junior and senior member of Guyana's national volleyball team and president of the Guyana Volleyball Association. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to do the welcome and opening remarks is our Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Basil Williams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mistress of Ceremonies. His Excellency the President, Brigadier David Arthur Granger, Mrs. Sandra Granger, First Lady of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, the Honorable Moses Nagamutu, Prime Minister of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and Mrs. Nagamutu, the Honorable Chancellor Carl Singh, Chancellor of the Judiciary, Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Barton Scotland, and Mrs. Scotland, Vice Presidents, Ministers of the Government, Leader of the Opposition, and former President Bar Jagdeo, former Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Robert Harmon Orlando Corbin, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Right Honorable Sir Dennis Byron, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Ministers of Legal Affairs and Attorney Generals from the region, Dr. Christoph Bernasconi, Secretary General of the Hague Conference on Private International Law, Maria Cristina Percival, UNICEF's representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, the Honorable Madam Justice Yonette Cummins Edwards, Chief Justice of Guyana, members of the Judiciary, Honorable Judges from the region, Sir Matthew Thorpe, Lord Justice of Appeal, Court of Appeal of England and Wales, retired, members of Parliament, Mrs. Patricia Chase Green, who worshipped the Mayor of Georgetown, colleagues of the bar, special invitees, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome you firstly to Guyana and secondly to the Hague Convention Congress on, and I quote, international family law, legal cooperation and commerce, promoting human rights and cross-border trade in Guyana through the Hague Conventions, end of quote. I am delighted that Guyana is the host for what is no doubt a prestigious gathering of legal minds, coming together to have the meaningful discourse on the challenges that confront our nations and how the conventions birthed from the Hague Conference on Private International Law may offer solutions. The first conference I attended as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs was the Hague Conference on International Law held in Trinidad and Tobago in June 2015. The hosting of this conference is in direct response to an appeal made by Sir Matthew Thorpe at that conference for Caribbean countries to embrace the ideals of the Hague Conference on Private International Law, HCCH, and sign on to its conventions. Sir Thorpe emailed me on the 23rd of August 2015 inquiring whether there was any hope of Guyana appointing a judge to the International Hague Network of Judges, pointing out that this may aid our country towards convention accessions. I responded on the 7th of September 2015, indicating that I am interested in hosting a Hague conference and would be grateful for his assistance. Sir Thorpe immediately responded and gave a thorough breakdown of what was needed to host a successful conference. He advised that I involve Mr. Ignacio Goycochea, the Latin American representative of the HCCH, and I heeded his advice. Mr. Ignacio Goycochea expressed the same enthusiasm as Sir Thorpe and immediately endorsed my proposal. After receiving their support, I went to President Granger with the concept note And the President, without hesitation, largely because it was aligned to his own program for children, the 5Bs program. I suspect most of you in the region might have heard of that program. And so, with his blessings, we were able to proceed. This paved the way for UNICEF to partner with us and graciously fund part of the conference, and I would like to especially thank the representative, Ms. Gittins from UNICEF, for being in the vanguard of this exercise. The HCCH also provided support in the area of programming and coordinating the presenters for the various conventions. This is a gathering of representatives from CARICOM and the wider Caribbean, about 22 countries in all. The content and quality of the various HCCH conventions are worthy of embracing. They primarily seek to improve the everyday lives of individuals, families, and businesses by providing the legal framework that directly responds to challenges inherent in our international world. It is therefore necessary to sensitize the legal community in Guyana and extend it towards the region so that we may all embrace the spirit of cooperation that underpins the HCCH conventions. We must be cognizant that we are living in the age of globalization, where solutions that confront us can only be solved when we work together to resolve them. The conventions of the HCCH are useful to bridge the gaps created by our differences by encouraging judicial and administrative cooperation between states in an effort to effectively settle international disputes. For those of us not a member of the HCCH or signatory to its conventions, the time to do so is now. Partnering with the HCCH allows us to become proactively involved in the welfare of our citizens, especially those most vulnerable, as well as contribute to the development of our economy. Embracing and aligning ourselves with the mission of the HCCH by becoming a contracting state will result in having a legislative framework reflective of international standards to resolve disputes. For example, in the area of international family law, where family disputes and dissolution span continents, the conventions offer tremendous benefit to ensure the human rights of children are protected. The Abduction Convention, the Adoption Convention, the Child Maintenance Convention, the Child Protection Convention will pave the way to secure the best interests of children and preserving the most important institution in society, the family. They will provide a legal mechanism for us in the region to collectively ensure that the human rights of children are preserved. Another example is in the area of legal cooperation and commerce, which is an important area for our region as we forge ahead in our mission to greater regional integration and cooperation. International trade disputes that confront us can be settled through the solutions offered by the HCCH conventions, which have as the underlying principle cooperation among states to resolve disputes. The conventions contribute to the ease of doing international business by removing the legal obstacles that hinder any thriving economy. For instance, they simplify and expedite judicial proceedings, ensure reciprocity as it relates to the enforcement of judgments in foreign jurisdictions. Additionally, they promote legal certainty by allowing contracting parties to choose both the choice of court and to hear the dispute and the law which govern the proceedings. This creates an environment of cooperation and encourages investment and trade. Some of these conventions include the Service Convention, the Evidence Convention, the Apostille Convention, the Choice of Courts Convention, and the Hague Principles on the Choice of Law in International Commercial Contracts. In conclusion, as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, it is my hope that Ghana becomes a member of the HCCH and that we can continue the work already started through the hosting of this conference. As a testament to Ghana's commitment to partnering with the HCCH, it gives me great pleasure to nominate our Honorable Chief Justice, Madam Justice Yonette Cummins Edwards, and Madam Justice Roxanne George, to be Guyana's representatives on the International Hague Network of Judges. I have no doubt they will bring to this prestigious network a wealth of knowledge that will contribute positively to the operating and functioning of the Hague Conventions. Finally, I wish to express my gratitude to all of you for supporting this conference by your presence, and I wish you a very productive and successful meeting. I thank you.
It is indeed an honor to address such a distinguished audience. But the distinction of the audience only demonstrates the importance of this conference. I have 3 points that I want to make. The first is to emphasize that this conference is part of a process. The Justice Ministers of the Commonwealth in May 2014 committed to increasing Commonwealth support for the Hague Family Conventions. 2 great international institutions, the Commonwealth and the Hague Conference, have been working together in this very important region, the Caribbean. Why is it so important? Because, as we see here, of the 20 jurisdictions represented, 16 are either Commonwealth members or British overseas territories, 16 out of 20. So we ought to be able to increase the efficacy of the Hague Family Conventions throughout the globe. My second point goes to time present and this conference. I have, over the course of my work as head of international family justice, had a lot of experience of delivering family justice conferences, and particularly international ones. And I know how hard it is to attract the finance, manage the administration, and gather the audience that are essential to make for change. I have never seen a conference so generously supported as this is. It is armed to change, because the people who have the capacity to change are here. And why are they here? It is thanks to the vision, the commitment, and the hard work of Basil Williams. It is, yes, it is his vision, yes, it is his commitment, and yes, it is the esteem in which he is universally held in this region that ensures that we have here today 20 jurisdictions represented by ministers of justice, chief justices, or senior members of the judiciary. And that brings me to my third and final point, which is to look to the future and to see the huge potential that this gathering has over the course of the next 48 hours to achieve change. The conference that we had a year ago in Trinidad, when I had the honor of meeting Mr. Attorney, did not actually achieve that much. It was, as it were, on the threshold, but not crossing the door. Partly because we just did not have the jurisdictions there that we needed. But here we have the jurisdictions, and that gives us the potential to achieve a breakthrough in the volume of support for the Hague Family Conventions in this region, and equally to extend and magnify the potential of the Hague Judicial Network to achieve, through direct judicial collaboration, results for the benefit of families and for the protection of children that would not otherwise be achieved. Mr. Attorney, I thank you for the opportunity that you have given me to offer these few remarks.
Beautiful Guyana, oh my lovely native land, more dear to me than all the world, thy sea-washed, sun-kissed strand, oh down upon the borders, looking out upon the deep, the great Atlantic longing to fury. At morn, at noon, all the pilgrims and sunsets glow. I love thee, oh, I love thee. Your Excellency, Mr. David Granger, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and First Lady, Ms. Sandra Granger, Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Nagamoto and Mrs. Nagamoto, Honorable Basil Williams, Minister of Legal Affairs and Attorney General of Guyana. Thank you for the invitation. Sir Matthew Thorpe, Lord Justice of Appeal of England and Wales, Honorable Ministers of Guyana and the Caribbean, distinguished parliamentarians, Secretary General of the Hague Conference on Private and International Law, Dr. Christophe Bernasconi, dignitaries and distinguished authorities from the Caribbean and further afield, representatives of civil society organizations, colleagues of the UN family, particularly Marianne, our representative here of UNICEF, media representatives, mistress of ceremonies, Mrs. Jem Sanford Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, and last but not least, dearest children and adolescents, a very good evening to you all. Buenas noches. I am pleased to be here with you tonight at the opening of this important conference in the year that Guyana is celebrating the 50th anniversary of its independence. For UNICEF, this event represents the Caribbean's commitment, promise, and robust political will to work together to build a stronger and better international legal environment for children and adolescents as it relates to private international law and for the protection of children. All Caribbean countries are very closely interlinked from historical, cultural, economic, and geographical perspectives. This is an important moment for all countries to make a collective commitment to strengthening their private international legal systems according to international standards to better protect their citizens and children in particular. Take a moment to step into the shoes of a child. You still have a good life, go to school, and are well cared for. Now, imagine that one day, someone you are familiar with picks you up from school, as he or she might do, but instead of taking you home, he or she takes you to the airport. Perhaps you are excited as you get on the plane together, thinking of where you will go and what you will see. But soon you realize that this is not a holiday and that you are not going back home. You begin to miss your family and friends you have known all your life. Perhaps it is very cold and you have never experienced winter. Perhaps you do not understand how the new people around you behave and speak. Nobody makes cook up or curry or your other favorite foods. You ask when you will go back home, but they tell you this is now your home and you are not going back. How would you feel? Sad? Lonely? Angry? Anxious? Unsafe? The longer it takes, the more you probably feel disconnected and confused because your whole world has changed. It may affect your health, your education, your hope, and your of being protected. Perhaps you are not even going to school anymore. Unfortunately, this is the sad reality for many children and their families around the world. The impact of abduction can be devastating and long-lasting for both the children involved and their family members left behind. Although no one can dispute the horror and significance of a child abducted by a stranger, this is the least likely type of abduction to occur. A child is more likely to be abducted by someone he or she knows and trusts. Although not every abduction is preventable, steps can be taken to reduce its likelihood. These steps have to be made within systems with a strong legal basis rooted in international norms and principles aimed at realizing children's rights. The Convention on the Rights of the Child establishes that the best interests of the child should be a primary consideration about a child's present and future. With the advent of international agreed human rights, the best interest approach was deemed redundant for adults, but not for children. Quite the contrary, the notion was turned into a principle in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. All countries in the Caribbean have made a commitment to the full realization of children's rights while ratifying the Convention. As you know, the Convention of the Rights of the Child and its optional protocols provides a holistic framework in which economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights of children are enshrined. On the other hand, private international law does not set human rights standards directly. However, it builds on those standards by establishing concrete requirements for their respect through the procedures it puts in place in the fields that it covers. In doing so, private international law not only reflects human rights law, but also complements the standards it sets by giving a practical dimension to implementation. This is clearly a key factor when applying the best interests of the child principle to the Hague Convention. Tonight, my message is very simple. Let us remember this powerful principle of the best interests of children in all our actions and all of our decisions, and let us support our countries in abiding to international private law so as to enhance their capacities to better protect children and put their best interests first. I commend those countries that have already taken steps in this direction, and I encourage the others to follow. Let's make this dream come true, not for UNICEF or for the Hague Conference, but for all Caribbean children. Excellency, Mr. President, you know better than me. You are doing that. The time to act is now. We can. Promoting equity, a fair chance for every child is a choice we can make, a choice we must make for their future and the future of our world. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias.
Your Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mr. Arthur Granger, and First Lady, Excellency Mr. Moses Nagamutu, Prime Minister and Mrs. Nagamutu, Honorable Basil Williams, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, and Mrs. Williams, Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Speakers, Honorable Ministers of the Government of Guyana, members of the Judiciary, senior government officials, members of the opposition, parliamentary officials, honorable attorneys and ministers from abroad, the Right Honorable Sir Matthew Thorpe, Mrs. Maria Cristina Perceval, UNICEF Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, civil society representatives, members of the Diplomatic Corps, children of the Success School Choir, representative of the media, invited guests, dear participants. One of the pleasant side effects of preparing opening remarks such as these is that one can research in detail the hosting state, its history, its economy, and its people. And this research often reveals true gems of information. So in preparation for this speech, I learned, for example, that the word Guyana is derived from the indigenous Amerindian language and means land of many waters. How appropriate. I also learned about the history Guyana shares with the Netherlands, the host state of the Hague Conference on Private International Law. For example, I learned that one of the Dutch colonies settled in today's Guyana was Demerara. So next time I will buy in my local supermarket Demerara sugar for a dessert, happily leaving it to my wife to prepare it, as she is the far better cook, I will forever be reminded of the very warm and generous welcome we received in your country. But I'm not here to tell you about my future shopping lists. Ladies and gentlemen, this may well be the first time that a Hague Conference meeting takes place in Guyana, but as my gaze wanders through this very distinguished crowd and impressive venue, I can only say, what an event it is. Today, the great efforts of many people materialize, efforts that made it possible for us all to gather here, efforts that I'm confident will shape Guyana's and the Caribbean's engagement with the Hague Conference for many years, indeed decades to come. I wholeheartedly congratulate and thank each and everyone who was involved in preparing this significant event. But allow me, in the name of the Hague Conference, and also on behalf of my colleague Ignacio Goicoechea, our representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, to express some special thanks too. First and foremost, I wish to express our deep gratitude to you, Mr. President, for your tremendous support and personal engagement that was so vital to seeing this event come to fruition. I would also like to sincerely thank our friends and partners at UNICEF for yet another very meaningful and most pleasant cooperation, for yet another good chapter that we have added to our joint story. And last, but most certainly not least, I wish to thank you, Attorney General. The support by the Ministry of Legal Affairs in the Attorney General's chambers has been outstanding and provided the engine for seeing through the preparation of the event. It was extremely fortuitous that you attended a similar event last year in Trinidad and Tobago, a conference that ignited your enthusiasm for the Hague Conference and our instruments. You immediately understood the great potential our instruments can have for Guyana and the region more broadly. And I understand that back then you already floated the idea to organize a similar event here in Georgetown. Attorney General, you had the foresight, will, and energy to organize this event, which is indeed the largest Hague Conference event ever held in the Caribbean. Thank you. Even though I may run the risk of repeating myself, I cannot stress how meaningful this event in fact is and will be for Guyana, the region, and indeed the Hague Conference as a whole. Let's take the case of Guyana. My research suggests that Guyana enjoys burgeoning cross-border trade and commercial activities, as well as an increasing degree of foreign investment in key industries, such as mining for bauxite and gold, oil, and sugar, the famous Demerara sugar on my shopping list. And I haven't even talked about rum yet. To do business here in the region, local, regional, and international businesses require an environment that is conducive to commercial investment activities. In particular, they require legal certainty and predictability. Foreign investors need to know the rules of the game before investing here or doing business here. They need to know which law will apply to their cross-border transaction, which court will have jurisdiction to hear litigation arising out of the transaction, what they can do with a Guyanese judgment so as to have it enforced abroad. What are the means of cross-border cooperation at their disposal if they start legal proceedings here against, say, a defendant in Brazil, and they need to serve process on him, take evidence in Brazil? What about their general access to justice here? How can the paperwork and red tape be reduced to the bare minimum so that administrative requirements do not become an unsurmountable obstacle to effective business transactions? Ladies and gentlemen, the relevant Hague Conventions and instruments tick all the right boxes in this regard. The Hague apostille, service of process, taking of evidence, access to justice, choice of court conventions, and the Hague choice of law principles, they all provide clear global frameworks and uniform standards that significantly reduce formalities, as well as transactional and litigation risks, thus improving certainty and predictability of outcome. Further, my research also revealed that due to these trade and investment activities, but also for historical and geographical reasons, Guyana boasts a very cosmopolitan and multinational population. The resulting high number of international marriages and relationships also need legal certainty and predictability, need basic rules that tell couples which court would need to deal with any ensuing issues and what law applies to which aspect of their relationship. Such couples also need to be able to avail themselves of legal administrative and judicial cooperative mechanisms that allow for the swift resolution of any cross-border issues they may face. And of course, children born into such marriages and relationships require a special layer of protection. Here too, ladies and gentlemen, the relevant Hague Conventions, the Hague Inter-Country Adoption, Child Support, Child Abduction, and Child Protection Conventions, effectively supported in their operation by the International Hague Network of Judges, they all offer proven solutions to these issues, and they facilitate the special protection of those most vulnerable in our societies, our children. Over the coming 2 days, we will, with the help of many proficient speakers who kindly gave us their time and expertise, examine and learn about how all these Hague Conventions, these core conventions which build the backbone of our program, how they help businesses and individuals alike to sail the treacherous waters of increasing internationalization and indeed globalization. For now, I limit myself to posting my expectations for the coming 2 days. I hope that this event will ignite in all delegates here present a strong interest and enthusiasm for the Hague Conference and its conventions, at least at the same level the AG experienced at last year's event in Trinidad. I also hope that this enthusiasm will be carried back to the capitals, and that, as a result, many Caribbean states will sign up to Hague Conventions and actively consider Hague Conference membership. And I sincerely hope that we can encourage those states that have not yet done so to designate 1 or 2 Hague Network judges. And we were, of course, delighted to hear about tonight's designations of 2 network judges from Guyana. Welcome to the network. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I happily accede to a specific request by the AG. He asked me to clarify during my opening remarks the intricate difference between the Hague Conference and the Hague Conventions. Well, by now I hope you will have understood that the Hague Conference on Private International Law is the name of the organization, the intergovernmental organization under the auspices of which all the Hague Conventions have been adopted. These conventions are international treaties to which a state may become a party, a contracting state, whether or not that state is also a member of the organization. I trust this brief explanation assists participants with grasping the basic distinction. Of course, I will provide further details during my introductory presentation tomorrow morning, and I'm happy to elaborate on any aspect in the margins of this seminar. Let me conclude by reiterating that I very much look forward to this seminar, our discussions and exchanges over the coming days, and I wish us all an excellent and pleasant meeting. Thank you.
Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Moses Nagamutu and Mrs. Sita Nagamutu, Honorable Chancellor of Judiciary, Mr. Carl Singh, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Dr. Barton Scotland, Vice President Sidney Allicock, Honorable Basil Williams, Minister of Legal Affairs, Honorable Dennis Byron, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, members of Judiciary, members of the government, members of the National Assembly, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Dr. Christophe Bernasconi, Secretary General of the Hague Conference, members of the Success Choir, members of the Parkside Seal Orchestra, beautiful singer, Ms. Cornett, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored this evening to greet you in the name of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and to start by recording my appreciation to Mr. Christophe Bernasconi for the unsolicited advertisement of Guyanese rum and sugar. When he's ready to speak again, I'll tell him something about bauxite, timber, gold, and diamonds, so he can continue to advertise Guyana's trade prospects overseas. This evening, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is happy and honored to welcome all of you, the delegations and delegates to this important conference organized by the Hague Conference on Private International Law, the United Nations Children's Fund, and the Government of Guyana. Guyana's hosting this conference is a demonstration of our commitment to examine ways in which we can strengthen our domestic and international human rights architecture, especially on the issues of international family law, legal cooperation, and commerce. Guyana this year, as you know, celebrated its 50th anniversary of independence. Over this time, and for the next 50 years, we have committed ourselves to achieving the objective of providing a good life for all Guyanese. A good life means more than economic growth. It is about the quality of life. It's about the creation of a caring and protective society, especially for its most vulnerable members, its children. A good life means respecting the rights of children, protecting them from abuse, and providing greater opportunities for them to have successful lives. A good life can be guaranteed at different levels, at the level of the family, which has the duty to protect its children, at the level of the community, which has a duty to cooperate for the protection of children, at the level of the state, which has a duty to provide legal protection and support for their citizens everywhere, and as we see tonight, at the level of international organization, here in the form of the Hague Conference on Private International Law, which is promoting international judicial and administrative cooperation in private law, especially international family and child protection law, civil procedures, and commercial law. The Declaration of Geneva of 1924, a landmark in international law, recognized that mankind owed to the child the best that it had to give. It urged the men and women of all nations to accept that beyond and above all considerations of race, nationality, and creed, the child must be given the means requisite for its normal development, both materially and spiritually. The child that is hungry must be fed. The child that is sick must be nursed. The child that is backward must be helped. The delinquent child must be reclaimed, and the orphan and the waif must be sheltered and succored. The child must be the first to receive relief in times of distress. The child must be put in a position to earn a livelihood and must be protected against every form of exploitation. The child must be brought up in the consciousness that its talents must be devoted to the service of fellow men. That declaration, as you know, triggered discussions which culminated in the United Nations General Assembly's adoption of the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. The Hague Conference, in the meantime, produced two important conventions which impacted on the protection of children. First was the Convention on the law applicable to the maintenance obligations towards children, and second was the Convention concerning the recognition and enforcement of decisions relating to the maintenance obligations towards children. The conference has since produced conventions relating to the protection of minors, adoptions, child abductions, and child support and maintenance, and measures for the protection of children. The Convention of the Hague Conference have complemented and supported the United Nations efforts in the protection of children. They've encouraged the development of national systems of legal protection for children and have been instruments in the development of family law. Guyana itself has passed a number of important laws relating to the protection of children. These include the Status of Children Act, the Child Protection Act, the Adoption of Children Act, Sexual Offences Act, Custody, Contact, Guardianship, and Maintenance Act. Guyana's legal architecture, however, relating to the protection of children and to issues of family law is far from finished. We expect that the deliberations of this conference will assist us in improving our systems, both legal and administrative, for the protection of our children. Guyana looks to this conference for guidance on the steps which may be taken to help to improve legal certainty and predictability in trade. Rum and sugar, for example. Trade is important to every country. Our country can be the gateway both to markets on the continent, in the Caribbean, and the wider world. We are both part of the South American continent and the Caribbean. Legal certainty and predictability in international commerce will provide assurances to exporters and importers trading in regional and international markets. The Hague Conference conventions can help provide legal certainty and predictability in international contracts. We are interested in learning how the relevant conventions can improve the business environment and competitiveness of our own products. The Hague Convention of 5th of October 1961, abolishing the requirements for legalization of foreign public documents, introduced a simplified authentication system for public documents. The convention can assist companies by facilitating the recognition of the parent company's documents during the registration process in a new country. It is also helpful for individuals who need a neater and speedier system for the authentication of public documents covered by the convention. Ladies and gentlemen, Guyana has been laying the foundation for a solid legal architecture of child protection. We have to commit to improving existing child protection laws and their enforcement. We have to commit to creating an enabling environment for commerce and trade. We have to commit to understanding more fully the legal implications and ramifications of the adoption of these conventions of the conference, a process that must be preceded by consultations with national stakeholders. Mr. Bernasconi, that offer is welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased this evening to declare this conference open. I thank you.